Hola chicos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos una vez más a mi canal. El día de hoy les traigo otro video. Es el último video en la serie sobre los sustantivos en español. Vamos a comenzar. Hey guys, how's it going? Today we are going to take a look at part 4 and also the final video in our series over nouns and gender in Spanish. So let's get started looking at a very basic and our easiest rules when it comes to making a noun plural. Our first rule is that when a word ends in a vowel, we add an S to it to make it plural. And this is very similar to the way we make vowels plural in English. So let's look at these. El chico becomes los chicos. La taza becomes las tazas. Now, I want to mention to you guys, if I don't have the word translated into English and you're not familiar with the vocab term, go ahead and take the time to look up the word and put it on a flashcard. Going through the act of doing that is going to help you with your vocabulary and help build it, and it'll help put it into your long-term memory. Okay, so let's look at our next rule. Words that end in a consonant, we will add an ES to it. El papel becomes los papeles. El celular becomes los celulares. Now a quick note, el celular means cell phone. Another word you might hear is móvil. I've heard that word used mostly by people that are from Spain. You can use either one. If you are living in the US, if you are interacting with a lot of Mexicans, I would recommend that you use the word celular instead of móvil, but you can use either one. You'll be understood either way. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at some words that drop their accents in the plural form. And with these type of nouns, they always have an accent in the singular form over the O. When it becomes plural, it drops the accent and we add an ES to the end of the noun. La estación becomes las estaciones. La conversación becomes las conversaciones. La sección becomes las secciones. La televisión becomes las televisiones. La generación becomes las generaciones. Now, another great thing about nouns in Spanish that end in CION is that they tend to be very close cognates to English. So even if you're learning Spanish for the very first time, looking at these words, you can probably just guess what they mean. Why don't you try writing down what you think the translation is, and then go ahead and look them up and see if you're right, because I bet you'll get every single one correct. Alright, so let's move on. Now let's look at some nouns that have spelling changes from the singular to the plural form. So this is a steadfast rule. Words that end in z in Spanish, well, we're going to drop the z and add a ces. So let's look at the top. El lápiz, we're going to drop the z and it changes to a ces. So it becomes los lápices. And it also has an accent on this. We'll do a different video over rules on accents, but I just want you to notice this right now. Okay, next one. La luz becomes las luces, and la actriz becomes las actrices. Alright, and I want to point out one more thing. Depending on where you're from, you might pronounce the z and the c in these words differently. So if you are in Latin America, the Z and C is pronounced the same here, these soft C sounds, and they pronounce like the English S. If you're from Spain, the Z's and C's here will be pronounced more like a TH sound. Either way is fine to pronounce if you're learning Spanish. You can choose the accent that you want. If you're living in the US, you might want to pick up an accent of people that you're going to be communicating with on a regular basis, but really it's up to you. Variety is the spice of life. Alright, let's move on. Okay, so now let's go over a bit more of nitty-gritty stuff. So nouns that end in a tonic I or U. Now what does that mean? When I say tonic I or a tonic U, I'm talking about a stressed letter, okay? So an I or U that has an accent mark on it. So we have two different options here, actually. With these sort of words, to make them plural, we can add either an ES or an S. Now, the preference for these types of words tends to be the ES form, but both of them are considered correct. So you can choose one over the other, it doesn't matter. So let's look. El tabú can be los tabús or tabúes. El marroquí can be marroquíes or marroquíes. El hindú, now remember, hindú. We don't pronounce the H, it's at the beginning of the word, so we ignore it, okay? El hindú can be los hindús or hindúes. So remember, either one is fine. There's a preference for the ES form, but they're both right. Now, we do have exceptions, of course. So this is an exception to an exception, sort of, right? Right here, the two examples I have are two very common words. El menú becomes los menús. El champú becomes los champús. Okay, so in these two words at the bottom, there's not an ES variation in the plural form. It's just with an S. Let's talk really quick about some nouns in Spanish which have a shift in the tonic syllable. Now remember, we just talked about the word tonic. So when I say tonic syllable, I'm talking about the stressed syllable. And this is not a very common occurrence in Spanish. Now these three words, let's go over them and see what they look like. El carácter. Now, this word doesn't mean character like a character in your favorite TV show. It means character when you're describing a person's character, right? Like their nature, their personality. So, el carácter becomes los caracteres. It has a shift in the tonic syllable, which is really interesting because we have the accent over the second L, and when it becomes plural, the tonic syllable changes. So, you just want to make note of that in your pronunciation and also when you're writing. The second one, régimen. So when it becomes plural, the accent changes from the E to the I. So the plural form is los regímenes. Los regímenes. You hear where you sort of jump on that I? That's where the tonic syllable is. And our last one, el espécimen, becomes los especímenes. Los especímenes. So again, the tonic syllable has changed. It's no longer on P, now it's on C. So write these down, practice saying them, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so let's go over something that we touched on a little bit in our last video, and that is nouns that have the same singular and plural forms. So this rule applies to nouns that end in an S or an X. They have more than one syllable, and the last syllable is unstressed. Now, you don't need to memorize all of these rules. These are just the characteristics of these types of nouns. So the first one you should be very familiar with by now because we've talked about it a few times already. El lunes becomes los lunes when it's plural. The next one, el tórax becomes los tórax. Okay, again, there's no change. These have the same singular and plural forms. Next one, el paraguas is los paraguas in the plural form. Now, paraguas is an umbrella. Another word is sombría. You might hear that word more often than paraguas. Okay, and then the next one, el virus in its plural form is los virus. Okay, so none of these changed. There's not a ton of words like this in Spanish, but it's important for you to recognize them, and especially with the days of the week, because that's probably the most common noun that you would be using. Okay, so let's move on. So let's do a quick review over some of the things that we have learned. So how do we say Mondays? All right? Los lunes. That's right. Remember, it's el lunes singular, los lunes plural. And don't forget, the days of the week in Spanish are not capitalized the way they are in English, okay? So the L is lowercase because it's not a capitalized noun in Spanish. Okay, next one. What's the plural form of the word lápiz? All right? Los lápices. We have a spelling change here. Why? Because the original noun in its singular form ends in a Z, and so we drop the Z and change it to a CES. Okay, now let's look at one more. So which one is correct? Televisiones with or without an accent on the O? Okay? So remember, these words that end in S-I-O-N or C-I-O-N will have an accent on the O. In the singular form, when it becomes plural, we go ahead and drop the accent. So how did you do? Hopefully you got these all right. This was a 4-part video series because there's actually a lot of stuff to cover when it comes to nouns, as you can see. And it's really interesting stuff. And I don't want this to be complicated for you guys. It's a learning process and you will get better as you continue your studies. If you have problems with it, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. You'll be fine. Just keep studying and don't give up. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Gracias por ver este video. Espero que les haya gustado y nos vemos muy pronto. Hasta luego.